Hey guys, tonight we're boarding a creaky 18th century ship drifting through fog and salt spray, a world where cabbage isn't just dinner, it's destiny. Picture this: a wooden deck slick with seawater, sailors shouting against the wind, and barrels of cabbage strapped down like treasure chests. Why? Because somewhere between superstition and survival, these men believed cabbage could cure everything: scurvy, seasickness, maybe even heartbreak. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You step onto the deck, the ocean breathing all around you. The air smells like salt and sweat, mixed with something faintly sour, the unmistakable tang of fermenting cabbage. The sailors call it sea medicine, though it's really just barrels of sauerkraut, packed tight to survive the long voyage ahead. They believe it keeps them healthy, strong, and sane. And you, the newcomer, can't help but laugh a little, until you notice how seriously they guard it. In an age when doctors still bled patients to release bad humors, cabbage was a kind of miracle. Sailors swore it healed wounds, soothed burns, and chased away the dreaded scurvy, a disease that turned gums black, teeth loose, and skin yellow. The truth is, they didn't understand vitamins yet, but they noticed something. Ships that carried cabbage had fewer sick men, so cabbage became a legend. You watch as the cook ladles out thin cabbage stew, the leaves soft as silk. No one complains. They eat like monks at prayer. Every bite feels like insurance against death. On stormy nights, when lightning claws the sky, even the captain takes a spoonful for strength. One old sailor, his beard crusted with salt, swears cabbage saved him twice, once from infection, once from heartbreak. Boil it, wrap it, eat it. It never fails, he mutters, winking. You almost believe him. After all, out here, surrounded by endless sea and sky, what else can you trust but your food and your faith? Historians still argue whether sailors discovered the healing power of cabbage by accident or intuition. Maybe it was divine mercy, maybe dumb luck. Either way, they clung to it. And when the ship's doctor stitched wounds or treated fever, he'd soak a rag in cabbage brine and whisper, "This'll pull the poison out." In the flickering light of the galley, you glimpse rows of green heads, firm, tight, wrapped like nature's own medicine bottles. The sailors even give them nicknames: Captain's Cure, Sailor's Soul, Sea Saint. One man carves a tiny face into a cabbage and hangs it near his hammock for good luck. Strange, yes, but maybe not so different from the way we clutch our own little charms today. You start to see a pattern. Belief itself is a kind of medicine.
The cabbage didn't just feed their bodies, it steadied their minds. Out here, belief was as important as bread. And so the myth grew, ship to ship, port to port, until cabbage became the most trusted cure on the open ocean. Whether it actually worked or not didn't matter much. It gave them hope. And hope at sea is the rarest thing of all. You wake the next morning to the sound of gulls and creaking ropes. The ocean stretches endlessly, pale and silver under the rising sun. You watch as the crew hauls up another barrel from below deck, another offering from their floating cabbage shrine. It's astonishing, really, how something so ordinary has become their lifeline. By now you've learned the routine. The cook chops cabbage like a priest preparing a ritual. Boil it for breakfast, pickle it for lunch, stew it for supper. You joke that if someone sneezes, they'll probably be wrapped in a cabbage leaf before the day's over. And you're right. One sailor burns his hand on a rope, and before the hour ends, the doctor's pressing cold leaves against the wound. The men swear it draws out the bad heat. Some whisper that cabbage can pull sickness from the soul itself. You can't help but smile. It sounds ridiculous, and yet There's something oddly comforting about it. After all, this is an age when medicine is more superstition than science. Bloodletting, mercury tonics, leeches, none of it makes much sense. But cabbage, that's something you can touch, taste, believe in. It feels pure, alive, even holy. Below deck, the air is heavy with the smell of brine and vinegar. You notice a few barrels leaking slightly, and a young cabin boy rushes to patch them up. He looks terrified, as if losing even a drop would curse the voyage. You ask him why it matters so much, and he says quietly, "Because the cabbage keeps the devil away." He's serious. Out here, every sailor knows that the ocean tests your soul. Tempests, hunger, loneliness, they all whisper madness. So they cling to what they can control: cabbage, prayer, and the rhythm of their work. Historians still argue whether sailors' faith in cabbage came from folklore or simple desperation. Some say it began in northern Europe, where farmers used cabbage poultices for centuries to heal wounds. Others claim early ship doctors noticed that cabbage kept longer than other vegetables, a miracle in itself during long voyages. You imagine how this belief spread from ship to ship like a seaborne legend. Sailors returning home would tell stories: how a dying man revived after eating boiled cabbage, how another's infected wound healed overnight. People love miracles, especially the kind you can plant in your garden. As the voyage continues, you see how deeply this green leafy myth has taken root.
One sailor mixes cabbage juice with rum and insists it'll clear the lungs. Another swears it keeps nightmares away. And when the sea grows rough, they tuck leaves into their hats for luck. You realize they aren't really worshiping the cabbage, they're worshiping survival itself. Every culture has its charms and its medicines. At sea, they just happen to look like vegetables. That night, as the sky deepens to indigo, the men sit on the deck, eating pickled cabbage with hardtack. The crunch echoes softly between waves. They laugh, they sing, and for a few moments, it feels like the ocean is kind. You taste a bite yourself. It's sharp, salty, and oddly refreshing. Maybe it really does heal something, though not in the way they think. You think about how fragile human faith is, and how powerful. In the middle of nowhere, with nothing but sea and sky, they built their own belief system out of leaves. Somewhere in the distance, lightning flashes, but no one flinches. The sailors have their cabbage, their courage, and their stories. And for now, that's enough to keep the darkness away. The storm hits just before dawn. You wake to the sound of shouting, ropes snapping, wood groaning, waves hammering the hull like fists. The ship lurches, throwing barrels across the deck. Salt water crashes through the hatch, soaking everything, even the sacred cabbage crates. For a moment, it feels like the ocean has come to collect the debt. You grab hold of the nearest post as a sailor skids past, clutching a handful of green leaves like a man saving treasure. "For the fever!" he yells over the wind before disappearing below deck. You can't tell if it's madness or faith that drives him. Maybe both. The captain's voice booms through the chaos, barking orders. Men scramble to secure the sails while lightning forks across the sky, turning the sea into a field of molten silver. It's terrifying, but also beautiful. The kind of moment that strips away logic and leaves only instinct. By the time the storm passes, hours later, the ship feels half alive. The deck is littered with broken crates, torn sails, and soaked food stores. The cabbage barrels, miraculously, have survived. You almost laugh. The sailors do too, weary but relieved. They haul up the surviving barrels and give thanks, as if the green heads inside had fought the storm themselves. One man crosses himself. Another mutters a prayer in a language you don't recognize. Then the cook, with solemn dignity, announces that tonight they'll have cabbage soup, a meal of survival. Historians still argue whether sailors truly believed in cabbage's power or simply used it as a symbol of endurance. But watching them now, huddled around a steaming pot, faces glowing in the lantern light, It's clear this isn't about science. It's about hope made edible. You sit with them, bowl in hand, as they tell stories of other voyages. One man swears that in the Baltic, sailors rubbed cabbage on their faces to block the wind. Another says his mother once buried cabbage leaves in the snow to trap the cold. You realize every version of the story has the same root, the belief that the simplest things can guard you from harm. In the corner, an older sailor named Bjorn tells a quieter tale. They say, he begins, that when God made the earth, he planted cabbage first so people would never go hungry. The others nod. It's not scripture, but no one questions it. You sip the soup. It's bland but comforting, full of the smoky flavor of the galley's iron pot. And in that moment, surrounded by laughter and dripping clothes, you understand something. Faith doesn't always need temples or priests. Sometimes it's just men on a ship, clinging to whatever keeps them steady. The next day, the storm feels like a memory. The sea is calm, almost shy, as if apologizing for its rage. The sailors dry their clothes, repair the ropes, and sing again. One of them carves a small cabbage into the ship's mast, a token of gratitude. Later, you find him staring at it, smiling. He says, "You know, if we make it home, I'll plant a whole garden of these." And for once, you believe him completely. As the sun sets, the ocean glows gold. The crew gathers for evening prayer, their voices blending with the waves. You look at the carved cabbage shining faintly in the light, and you think, maybe that's what faith really is. Not certainty, but endurance wrapped in belief. Days stretch into weeks, and the rhythm of sea life settles back in. The slap of waves, the groan of timbers, the endless horizon that never changes. The storm has passed, but its memory lingers like a ghost. The sailors still rub cabbage leaves on their arms, drink boiled cabbage water for cleansing, and hang small dried leaves from their bunks to keep away spirits. You might laugh if it weren't so sincere. Out here, in the endless blue, reason and superstition blend together like salt and wind. Every morning, the cook sets out a bucket of brine-soaked cabbage, the last of their store. He treats it like gold, rationing it carefully. For strength, he says, handing out a few leaves per man. The youngest sailor, a boy barely 16, complains that it tastes like seawater and misery. The older men just grin. "That's the flavor of staying alive," one replies. By midday, the sun burns high and merciless. The sailors' faces glow red, their lips cracking from salt. You help scrub the deck, and even the smell of cabbage brine feels oddly reassuring, familiar, earthy, human. It reminds you that the world beyond this endless water still exists somewhere. That night, under a sky stitched with stars, the captain invites you into his cabin. He's a stern man with gray whiskers and eyes like frostbitten steel, but tonight he's softer. He opens an old leather-bound logbook, yellowed and water-stained. Inside are pages filled with cramped handwriting and pressed cabbage leaves, flattened like relics. "These," he says, tapping one of the leaves gently, "came from my grandfather's voyage. He swore cabbage saved his crew from the scurvy fever." He looks up, half smiling. "I suppose we carry our own superstitions like family names." You run your fingers over the brittle leaf. It's paper thin, but still green at the edges, a small miracle of endurance. Historians still argue whether sailors were truly so devoted to cabbage or if later writers exaggerated the myth. Some point to records from the 18th century describing how Captain James Cook stocked barrels of sauerkraut to prevent disease. Others say it was never faith, just practicality disguised as ritual.
But when you see how the crew treats those green leaves with reverence, even affection, it's hard to separate myth from medicine. The captain closes the book. "It's not really about the cabbage," he says quietly. "It's about having something to believe in when the sea wants you dead." Outside, the ocean hums against the hull. Somewhere below deck, laughter rises, rough, tired, but alive. You realize that belief, no matter how strange, gives the sailors a rhythm, a reason to wake each morning. Later, unable to sleep, you climb to the deck. The moon paints the water silver. You spot the youngest sailor again, sitting alone, carving something into a bit of driftwood. "What are you making?" you ask. He shrugs. "A charm," he says, then shyly adds, "a cabbage." You laugh softly. "Does it work?" He looks at you with wide sea-glass eyes. "It keeps me from being afraid," he says simply. And there it is, the heart of the thing. Belief boiled down to its purest form. Not about curing disease or defying storms, but about silencing fear, one green leaf at a time. You watch him finish his carving. He ties it with a scrap of rope and hangs it beside his hammock, a tiny wooden cabbage swaying with the ship. The sea is calm tonight, almost kind. The stars shimmer above like tiny lanterns, and you think again of the old joke that sailors once believed they could pluck them down to read by. Maybe they weren't wrong. Maybe light in any form is what keeps us afloat. By the next dawn, the wind shifts, gentle, forgiving, like the sea has decided to let you breathe again. The ship drifts steady toward the east, the horizon melting into pale gold. From the galley, a smell rises that's oddly comforting. Warm cabbage soup, spiced with a pinch of salt and something faintly sweet.
You join the line of sailors, each man clutching a tin cup. The cook ladles out the soup carefully, his hands trembling with pride. "Last of the stores," he mutters. "Make it count." You sip, and the taste hits like memory, sharp, earthy, alive. The crew eats in silence, heads bowed, steam rising around them like morning prayer. For a moment, it feels holy. Then, as the sun climbs, the lookout's voice cracks the quiet. "Land!" Chaos erupts, laughter, cheers, disbelief. Men climb the rigging, others drop to their knees in tears. You follow their gaze, and there it is, a faint green line on the horizon, trembling in the heat. Land. After weeks of salt and fear, that word tastes better than any food. The captain's voice booms from the deck. "Steady, men! No mistakes now!" But even he can't hide the smile breaking through his command. The sailors work like a single heartbeat, trimming sails, coiling ropes, shouting orders. Even the boy with the wooden cabbage charm joins in, grinning so wide his sunburn cracks. Hours later, as the anchor drops with a thunderous splash, the crew stands in quiet awe. The shore is lush, wild, and green, trees bending low, leaves glistening like jewels. The air smells of earth, wet and real. The captain turns to you. "We made it," he says simply. His eyes drift toward the galley. Maybe the old man's cabbage did its job after all. That night, they build a small fire on the beach. Someone roasts the last of the dried meat. Someone else hums a song older than memory. The youngest sailor places his tiny wooden cabbage beside the flames and whispers a few words you can't quite catch. It's not a prayer exactly, more like a thank you. You realize something then. History often forgets the small things, the taste of cabbage on a desperate night,
the way belief can keep a man alive when reason has drowned. Historians will write about the ship, the voyage, maybe the storm, but they'll never feel what you felt standing here. The quiet joy of survival, the fragile holiness of something green. Later, as the stars rise again, the captain opens his logbook one final time. He writes slowly, his quill scratching against the page. Landed safe, crew in good health, no scurvy, spirits high. Note: the men believe Cabbage had a hand in our salvation. I see no harm in believing it too. He closes the book, presses a fresh leaf between the pages, and sets it aside. The cabbage crackles, the sea whispers, and for the first time in weeks, the horizon feels like promise, not punishment. The cabbage, humble, simple, absurd, has become something sacred, not because it cured the sick or calmed the sea, but because it reminded the men they were still human. And in the end, that's what kept them alive.